Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Day 31. Happy Halloween, everybody. I have no news on when we're going to reopen, although the president seems to think that he has the thought of going nuclear, the nuclear option in the Senate, and the filibuster. That was his post on Truth Social that we'll talk about in a moment here. But of course, lawmakers are gone, most of them. The Senate is now out for the weekend. Everybody's getting ready to go pass out candy. And tomorrow's a big day, November 1st. SNAP benefits begin to expire. Open enrollment begins for those seeking health care with subsidies not yet addressed. And Head Start also starts to go broke tomorrow. We also have elections ahead next Tuesday. So there are some thoughts that as talks begin behind the scenes in Washington, maybe something's about to shake loose. But the talking points haven't changed. Listen to House Speaker Mike Johnson from earlier today.
The same Democrats who've been perfectly fine with defunding SNAP and WIC for over a month now are suddenly claiming to be outraged that Republicans and President Trump can't just wave some magic wand and fix the mess that they themselves have created. If they're suddenly waking up to the pain their reckless decision is causing, then there's one simple way to fix it. They can come back in here and vote to reopen the government.
Of course, they're not back in here. As I mentioned, everybody's away for the weekend. And while the House has been out of session for more than 45 days, Laura Davison covering all of this here in our Bloomberg Washington Bureau, our deputy Washington Bureau chief with us now at the desk. The president says go nuclear, end the filibuster. This thing would be done in just moments. What's the majority leader think of that?
He does not like this idea one bit. He, for months has been saying he doesn't like it. He came out, his spokesman came out, and after Trump made this post yesterday, saying he wanted Republicans to do that, said, nope, this is not on the table. This is not happening. And Thune rightly recognizes that, the Republicans are not going to be in control of Washington forever, and they don't want Democrats to have the ability to just enact sweeping changes when they're in power, whether that be 2, 4, 6, 8 years from now.
Well, short of that, we have no off-ramp at the moment. There has been chatter, as you've been reporting, Laura, that there are some rank and file talks underway, although we've heard that before. I am compelled, though, by this headline that Chuck Schumer met yesterday with Senator Katie Britt. Does that give us a sense that the gears are starting to turn?
It could. Katie Britt's state of Alabama is a state that relies heavily on SNAP benefits. Yeah. We were doing an analysis of all of the districts, and there are lots of Trump districts that, are very reliant on this food aid. So that could start to see Republicans seeing pressure from folks at home. You have Head Starts closing. You also have, federal workers who are going without pay. The thing I think we really need to watch that's going to be the pressure point, though, are airports. And we've seen some sporadic closures, ground stoppages, including at DCA yesterday, where Thune was stranded at the Capitol, couldn't get back to South Dakota. But they've sort of all been temporary. We haven't seen system-wide outages that will really be the thing that could tip this into negotiating mode.
Do we hear any chatter about a walkout? I mean, obviously, the air traffic controllers are not being paid, and they're all working overtime just by the nature of their jobs. When does the union say it's sick out day?
That's, what our team here is very closely trying to figure out. They have not indicated that. Even, last shutdown back in 2018, 2019, we had a day where you had Miami, Philadelphia, LaGuardia, and Newark that were basically all had ground stoppages and just totally messed up all air travel across the eastern seaboard. And that, later that night is when the shutdown ended. And that wasn't even a coordinated thing. That was just enough people saying on day 35 of the shutdown, I can't, it doesn't make sense for me to go into work. I've got other priorities. I need to be driving for DoorDash or Uber or whatever to pay the bills.
What a thought. Day 35, by the way, is Tuesday, so we'd set a new record next Wednesday for the all-time. There's new polling out, Laura, pretty incredible, and it's what I guess Chuck Schumer was probably hoping for. ABC News, Washington Post poll finds Americans blame Republicans over congressional Democrats. There you see it on your screen. 45 to 33%. Independents blame Republicans by a 2-to-1 margin. Do numbers like these start to pull a meeting together at the White House?
It could. And this is also why you see Democrats saying that they're not going to fold. They want to stay in this fight. They've had sort of the edge in polling the entire time. This polling is better than some that were even, a couple weeks ago. So it seems that they've been able to keep public opinion on their side during this. Republicans, they also think that they have the edge. This poll doesn't necessarily indicate that, but they're both kind of waiting to see where the chips fall. Problems with the shutdown compound the longer it goes. So Republicans are betting that people are going to get fed up and blame the Democrats. Democrats are betting that people are going to see their premiums increase and say, what the heck, we need to get this solved.
Wow, boy, it's going to feel different when we start the new week here on Monday, and these benefits have actually begun to expire and real people are telling stories. We'll just have to see how that goes, and of course what the reaction will be on Election Day. Laura, I want to ask you about the president, though. His comments on Venezuela was on Air Force One. He's on his way to Florida right now. They actually stopped the jet on the tarmac so he could go back, talk to reporters. When asked about imminent strikes against Venezuela, as the Miami Herald reported, he said no.
He said no, he's not thinking. He said no, he's made no decision, and no, that no attacks are imminent. This, there have been two reports, but one from the Wall Street Journal that said this was under discussion, and another one from the Miami Herald that was much more definitive, saying that this, could be coming within days or hours. Poured a lot of cold water on that. I think that is, kind of lessen the flames and the sort of. Discord around that topic. But this has been, Trump himself a week ago said that land strikes would be next. So I think the question is still here, not necessarily, if, but when. But clearly he's not ready to come out and say he's made that decision yet.
That's fascinating stuff. This is what we're going to be getting into coming up next with retired General Wesley Clark. Laura, thank you as always. Happy Halloween, I'm supposed to say as well. It is October 31st. Big Halloween bash, I hope, for you. Laura Davison, our Deputy Bureau Chief, we thank you. I'm Joe Mathieu in Washington, and thank you for being with us here on the Halloween edition of Balance of Power. The president has said a lot about Venezuela. These reports shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, knowing as well that a carrier strike group is on its way right now, the USS Jerry Ford, soon to arrive in the Caribbean. Here's the latest from President Trump on this.
Our sea drugs, as they call them, they use the term sea drugs, the drugs coming in by sea, are like 5% of what they were a year ago, less than 5%. So now they're coming in by land, and even the land is concerned because I told them that's going to be next. The land is going to be next, and we may go to the Senate, we may go to the Congress and tell them about it, but I can't imagine they'd have any problem with it. I think, in fact, while we're here, I think it's a good idea.
It's a good idea. All right. The land is next, he said. That was October 23rd, his most complete remarks on this to date, until, again, he said no to the reporters asking him this morning. So this may not be done. It may just really be a question about timing, to Laura's point, and that's what we want to talk about with the general. Wesley Clark is with us, retired four-star general, U.S. Army, served as commander of U.S. Southern Command, so he knows this region rather well, founder of Wesley K. Clark and Associates. General, it's great to see you. I wonder how you're interpreting the remarks by the president, knowing the flotilla, the armada that we have assembled that's about to get even bigger in the Caribbean. How do you read his remarks, and what do you think is about to happen in Venezuela?
I think it's like jiggling the skeleton key in the lock. It doesn't always engage the first time you move it back and forth and play with it a little bit. So you've got military force. So the rumors are that there are some special operators inside Venezuela. You're not quite sure what the target is. That's Maduro's problem. Is it him? Could he just suddenly disavow Russia, Iran, and China and say, no, I don't want them. I'm on your side, America? Could he suddenly say, I'm going to crack down on all? Could he say, I'm just going to accept the results of the next election, and I mean it this time? He doesn't know what the objective is, so he's under a lot of pressure. And I think this is part of the strategy. We don't know what the objective really is of the administration, but if it really is about drugs, then yes, most of it is coming through Mexico by land. And if you're going to do something with drugs, you have to look at the demand side as well. So we're just in the early stages of this yet. This is a pressure building up on Maduro.
It is something. You mentioned the demand side. We never talk about that as if these drugs are, being pushed on Americans. They're coming here because Americans are demanding them, which is its own problem. The USS Gerald Ford is on its way right now, General. It's apparently not in theater yet. Would the administration take action without that platform being there?
Well, it depends on what the objective is of the administration. If the objective was to go in and snatch Maduro and put him on trial somewhere, then maybe you don't need the Ford there. If the objective is to sort of intimidate, be prepared, then you want overwhelming force. And that's what we're assembling there. They do have aircraft. They do have aircraft, anti-aircraft. They have radars. They have ships. But that could all be taken out in a few hours, I think. What you couldn't do, even with the two amphibious groups that are there from the Marines and so forth, what you can't do is really go in and occupy Venezuela. It's just too big, too many people, too many weapons distributed. Yeah. You can't quite do the same kind of takedown that we did in Panama against Manuel Noriega in 1989. That was an entirely different case, legally, militarily, geopolitically. So this is different. We still don't really know what the objective is of the administration, and it could be that really it is drugs. It also could be that's just what you say when there's a private set of objectives that are coordinated through Congress. And he has briefed at least the Republican members of Congress in the big committees. I hope he'll bring the Democrats in too, because national security shouldn't be partisan. It should be beyond the country's borders. We should all be one nation.
Well, this is a great point that you make, and maybe that will actually tell us a bit if we start seeing briefings across the aisle on Capitol Hill. I know that the Pentagon has not been terribly fond of talking to Congress at all lately. But, General, we've seen B-1 bombers and B-52 bombers buzzing Venezuela's airspace. We also saw Venezuelan F-16s buzz a couple of U.S. ships weeks ago when we first started striking these alleged drug boats coming out of Venezuela. You mentioned the fact that they do have some aircraft. They've got anti-aircraft missiles and the like. What kind of a job would it be for us to knock all of that out? Or would there in fact be an air war over Venezuela?
You never want to discount an adversary. So, yes, they've got pilots. They fly F-16s. They have some air-to-air weapons, but they don't have the modern air-to-air weapons. They don't have the system that we have. So there might be an air war over Venezuela. They might get some aircraft actually off the ground. But in terms of our ability to reach out and strike, our ability to use stealth, our ability to name the time and manner of attack and so forth, I don't think there's any question about the outcome. And the Israelis have really pioneered this. In their operations, they typically strike. They're effective. They're using our technology. Of course, we know all those systems. I wouldn't think there'd be much of a problem. But for the pilot in the aircraft, hey, he's put his life on the line for the country. He's got to succeed, and we would do everything possible to make sure we can do this effectively without losses.
Yep. As we're speaking, General, we're showing images, video of some of the alleged drug boats that we've blown up recently. Too many to count at this point. There was a sub. We've got the boats as well. This is quite a gallery that we have of these things blowing up and catching on fire. A lot of people have died. As someone who actually ran Southern Command, what is your thought on the legality of this operation so far?
Well, it should have been briefed as legal. Presumably, there's some legal authorization to it. We haven't been told that. The evidence that has been presented to Congress, at least as it's been explained publicly, doesn't fully justify that we know for sure that these are drug boats. And if they are, then it would be a violation really of maritime norms to attack them. We would normally seize and secure them, use them to collect information, and then run it back to the source. This is a different approach. It's more about sort of naked power than it is the international rules-based system. And this is one of the concerns that so many have today when you look at the shape of the international environment, what's going on in Ukraine, what's happening or might happen in Taiwan and so forth. How do we use all the tools of statecraft, not just the military and not just tariffs, but international law, diplomacy, and how do we put it all together in a package that best serves the interests of the American people? And so when you look at what's happening with these boats, You have to ask, what if Russia decides to do this? What if China decides that it makes up with anything in the South China Sea that's moving must be a threat to China and starts knocking off boats? Certainly wouldn't like it. So I think we have to be very careful about the example we set. I hope that the administration will come forward soon with more of a legal justification and make sure that this is not a partisan but a bipartisan thing. It's got the support of the entire Congress. That's the way that American foreign policy is strongest.
Yeah. General, I only have a minute left, and I hate to bring up a whole new topic. I don't want to have to cut you off. But this headline just ran from CNN. The Department of Defense has okayed Tomahawk missiles for Ukraine, and it will leave the decision finally to President Trump. In our remaining 30 seconds, should those missiles go to Ukraine?
Absolutely right. Yep, puts more pressure on Putin, brings us closer to an end of the war. Yes, absolutely. Great decision.
Fascinating. We'd love to talk to you more about that when we learn more, General. It's good to see you. Retired General Wesley Clark with us live again on Bloomberg TV and radio. We thank you, as always, for the insights. Tomahawks for Ukraine cleared by the Pentagon. We'll see what the president has to say about this. Maybe he'll be asked about it if he talks to reporters when he lands in Florida. He's on his way there right now for a weekend at Mar-a-Lago. The Halloween edition of Balance of Power continues next with our panel, Rick Davis and Archie Siddiqui, together as we look ahead to Election Day next week. The impact of the government shutdown should not be discounted, and we'll get their take next on Bloomberg.
Stay with us on Balance of Power. We'll have much more coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
The numbers in California are eye-popping as we follow the money here on Prop 50. You know, next Tuesday is an election day, and we've talked a lot on this program about the gubernatorial races, certainly in Virginia and New Jersey. We've talked a lot about the New York City mayoral race, and we're going to get into all three of these. But also, what's taking place in California is extremely important. Prop 50, this is redistricting, right? We talked about it a lot when this first emerged, and it has started a cascade now of other states rewriting their congressional maps following what is expected to take place in California. Gavin Newsom put this up for a vote. That was the way they decided to handle it. And Prop 50 looks like it's going to pass quite easily. Over the past 11 weeks, Bloomberg News reporting Newsom and his allies brought in more than $120 million for Prop 50, about 3 times the total raised by the proposal's opponents. Yes, George Soros' name is on there, along with others, including Reed Hastings. And this is where we start now with our political panel. Bloomberg Politics contributor Rick Davis is with us, our Republican strategist and partner at Stone Court Capital. Archie Siddiqui with me here in Washington as well. Former aide to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, founder CEO of Bellwether Government Affairs. It's great to have you both with us. Archie, I'd love to start with you on Prop 50. Are you expecting a blowout? And what would this mean for the redistricting efforts around the country and just the aura for Democrats that might follow nationally?
Well, I think there are 2 important pieces about California. One is it's a defensive measure, and I think the governor really went out of his way to structure it in a way that really was not a unilateral decision by him, but actually going back to the voters. So, and then it was a really quick ramp up time. So it's a defensive measure for Democrats in a very aggressive push by Republicans to go state by state and try to rewrite these districts.
What do you make of the money involved here, Rick? You've run enough campaigns and elections to have a sense of this. You expect a blowout?
Well, it certainly is what's indicated in the polling. I mean, recent polling, as you pointed out, Joe, 6 in 10 Californians are supporting Prop 50. Out of 160 million being spent, 125 of that is pro Prop 50. So it's overwhelming force politically. And so we'll see. Early voting is very favorable to the Prop 50 demographics, but early indications are that there'll be a significant Republican advantage on Election Day, which is pretty traditional in an early voting state.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, Rick makes reference to the poll out in the last 24 hours from the Institute of Governmental Studies at the University of California, Berkeley. 60%, Archie, of likely voters backed the proposal, compared with 48% of registered voters who were surveyed in August. So there's been some real momentum here. Really interesting. Will Democrats regret this move? Knowing that, of course, this started in Texas by Republicans, but it's tipped off a cascade of states that really could end up favoring Republicans in the end.
No, I actually, not at all. I think if anything, it is a defensive mood that really Democrats were backed into a corner.
You saw no choice on this.
Yeah, there's no choice. And honestly, that's just unilateral disarmament where, it's not a fair fight going into the midterms. So I think even now with this California move, that still doesn't get Democrats where they need to be. Sure. Because you saw this in Indiana. In Indiana, the Republicans are very skittish, and it's just been this barrage of pressure by Washington, Republicans in Washington and the administration on getting that piece done.
Really interesting. As we gather here on day 31 of the government shutdown, there are implications, according to some at least, that will play out here in these elections. Again, we've got governor's races in Virginia, New Jersey. We've got New York might kind of be its own thing with the Mamdani factor. But let's keep these two gubernatorial races in mind. Rick Davis, people start losing SNAP benefits tomorrow. Open enrollment's going to be in everybody's face when it comes to Obamacare. We've got Head Start on ice all of a sudden because of the shutdown. People are going to be talking about ground stops, most likely at airports. How does that play in favor potentially of Democrats or Republicans in these two races?
Look, I mean, the polls that we've been talking about around the government shutdown penalize Republicans, especially with independent voters who tend to be the deciding vote in a lot of races. And certainly will be in this very close New Jersey governor's race that is within the margin of error, and turnout will be a major contributing factor to the outcome of this race. In other words, who shows up in the early voting and on election day? Is it going to be Democrats who are motivated because of the anger they have toward the government shutdown? Is it Republicans who are supportive of the Donald Trump agenda? And so I think that's the one to watch. Of all of these, the outcomes are pretty much assured, except for New Jersey. And if Democrats win, Republicans are going to say, "Wow, if without a government shutdown, could we have taken that race?" And I think that's not an academic issue. That could be pretend serious considerations for how to handle then the midterm elections.
Yeah. If the polls like today's from ABC News, Washington Post show Americans blame Republicans, does that favor Democrats on Tuesday?
I think the government shutdown nexus in New Jersey is interesting because if you look at it is a margin of error race, as Rick pointed out, right. But also importantly, there's been a lot of campaigning in communities of color, and some of these benefits are really disproportionately cuts are impacting communities of color. So I think from that perspective, there's a nexus. But I do think turnout is going to be critical in New Jersey, and it is a very tight race. And as you know, for the past 60 years, voters in New Jersey, they alternate between a Democrat or a Republican in the governor's office.
Right. So how worried are you about New Jersey as a Democrat?
I think what's very exciting is Mikey Sherrill is just the whole package. She's smart, she's driven, she has a national security background, she's a moderate pragmatist, a problem solver. So I think that's a lot of room for hope there.
Well, it's being looked at as a bellwether. Rick Davis, how important will the results in New Jersey specifically be for these two parties?
Yeah, look, I think that if Republicans can win this, and we, as Archie pointed out, we haven't been that successful in most recent statewide election history. They're gonna rally around the president's agenda in a way that right now you don't see happening in the other races, and so it will give an impetus to Republicans to double down on this strategy. It'll make it more difficult to cut a deal to open government, assuming we're not open by, the 4th of November. And so it could really change the mental attitude that Republicans have about, whether they're leaning back or leaning into this agenda going into the midterms.
Really interesting. We haven't talked enough about Virginia, probably because a lot of folks see this as a foregone conclusion. By the way, we should note that Virginia's General Assembly advanced a proposed constitutional amendment today that could bring redistricting to the Old Dominion. Archie, is this a blowout, as many are casting in the media? I live in Virginia, although I'm in Northern Virginia, so I'm not seeing a lot of winsome signs around. How do you expect this to pan out?
I think no one should take Virginia for granted.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. And you look at Youngkin's win last time, and we've seen some indications that Trump is really focused on Virginia because of redistricting.
Right.
So he's engaging. And so in that, as we know, he can be a very powerful advocate on the campaign trail. So in this final stage, I think Democrats aren't taking anything for granted, and they cannot afford to. Now, the great thing is Abigail Spanberger is a fighter. The Congresswoman knows how to really run a really aggressive and strong campaign, and she's really focused on issues of affordability and delivering for Virginia families.
Well, as my fellow Virginian Rick Davis would tell you, we can't get through a single commercial break without seeing ads in this campaign. It's just been dominating the airwaves and dominating the conversation. Rick, to what extent could the shutdown impact results in Virginia as well, knowing how many federal workers live here?
Yeah, we've been looking at turnout in Fairfax County, a competitive county that has been trending more blue than red in the last few cycles. And the turnout as of today is on the same par level as a presidential election. And remember, this isn't even a midterm. This is an off-year election, which means turnout usually is off. And so the fact that you've got that level of activity at the ballot box before Election Day it usually indicates that you've got a change election coming, which would, of course, advantage the Democrats in this case. But I got to believe that you have that kind of a strong move in Fairfax County. It is a direct corresponding factor to the shutdown. And of course, we see all that news, and we have hundreds of thousands of people who've been affected. And so you got to believe that's translating into some political activity.
Really interesting. This is going to be a fascinating night, actually. I'm really looking forward to it. In our coverage here on Bloomberg, we'll have special coverage for you on Tuesday, live from World Headquarters in New York. Everyone's expecting Mayor Mamdani to show up at some point, maybe later in the evening on Tuesday. What do you make of the Republican effort to elect Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat turned independent?
Yeah, I think the fear factor, there's certainly a excitement factor on the Democratic side for Mamdani. I think on the Republican side, there's a fear factor, and there has been a fear factor, and then also an attempt. It's interesting. We were talking about Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill. Yeah. Nobody talks about them as our standard bearers and great examples of Democrats. People are also looking at Mamdani to really kind of characterize him as a radical, whereas we have these other two potential governors who are really middle of the road pragmatists.
Fascinating. Rick, we've only got about 30 seconds. Does Wall Street vote Cuomo?
Wall Street votes Cuomo, absolutely. Everybody I've talked to over the last few months prepping for this election on Tuesday are sick with concerns about what that agenda that Mamdani has is going to result in for New York City. And so we'll see, but I think fear and loathing is the nature of the election in New York City.
Fear and loathing in Manhattan. Rick Davis, Archie Siddiqui, many thanks to both of you for a great conversation. Again, we'll have special election night coverage here on Bloomberg.
Stay with us on Balance of Power. We'll have much more coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Yeah, have you seen this new movie, A House of Dynamite? It's on Netflix, and it's the big thing to watch. Well, this weekend, last weekend, I actually had a chance to see it myself. And it's making news because it's a pretty scary proposition. The idea here is that and I'll give you the spoiler alert right now. There's no way I can't ruin this movie for you. And just wait till Tony Capaccio starts talking. There's a nuclear attack against America. There's an ICBM. We don't know where the heck it came from. It's coming in on Chicago, and we try to knock it out of the air. Think dare I say it out loud, Golden Dome. Think Iron Dome, right? We've got interceptor missiles. They go up there and knock the thing down, shooting a bullet with another bullet. Except in this case, it misses. A terrifying thought. This movie is from Catherine Bigelow, the latest, remembering Zero Dark 30 and the rest, and it got the attention of the Pentagon. Because when we start talking about missile defense, this isn't exactly the kind of message that the Pentagon wants to send to everybody around the world. Now, again, watching this movie. Enter Tony Capaccio. He got his hands on a piece of paper inside the Pentagon. Remember, this is the Pentagon that kicked all the reporters out. Making clear that they think this movie is inaccurate and they're trying to set the record straight to some extent here. Now, Tony's been picked up. He's the only person with this document. He's been picked up everywhere from the New York Times to the Hollywood Reporter to Esquire, and they even got Catherine Bigelow to respond to this, and no one's getting along. So we're delighted, as always, to have Bloomberg's national security reporter with us, Tony Capaccio. Good to see you.
Hi.
They must be glad they kicked you out of the building, because now you're breaking more news than you were when you were in the building, which I find hysterical.
Here's the irony. It was dated October 16th, the day after we all left.
How about that?
Yeah. This is the kind of memo they wouldn't want us to get. It was not stamped CUI, but it was for internal use only. They underlined internal and not releasable to the public.
Okay. Someday I want to know how you got this.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so tell us what the problem is, because this is not a documentary. What's the Pentagon care about the movie?
Okay, the memo is not a slash and burn that everything stinks in the movie.
Yeah.
It was not. It's fairly measured and fairly muted and fairly technical. It was meant to be a heads up for those in the Pentagon.
If you get asked about this kind of thing?
If they get asked about it and if it shows up in conversation.
Okay.
It had a limited run in theaters, and not every Pentagon official gets Netflix. So this was like a heads up memo.
Understood.
But it was fairly detailed, and it was not a slash and burn.
Okay.
They actually acknowledged that some of the film laid out the messages they wanted, that the U.S. could be attacked by a nuclear weapon, the value of deterrence. So it wasn't slash and burn, but it was a critique.
A critique. They called it inaccurate and went so far as to say we have 100% capability of knocking said missile out of the air. Is that even true?
Okay, this is an area I've covered for quite a while. And literally, for the last 4 of these things, it is true. Between 2017 and 2023, the last time it happened, they had scored. They hit 4 times in a row.
The last time what happened, though? Where was
there was an intercept test.
Okay.
These are always high visibility issues. Between like 2001 when they started doing these, or 2002, I think it was, they've had 12 of 21 hits.
Got it.
Those are with older prototypes, elementary radar, elementary warheads. But the last 4 were with better warheads, better discrimination technologies, and better command and control and detection technology. Excuse me. One of the tests, one of the 4, was so significant that the Pentagon's test office, which was a critic of the program for quite a while, that said it only had a limited capability to defend the United States against a small number of missiles. One of those tests was convincing enough where they dropped the word limited and said it's demonstrated a capability to defend the United States against a small number of missiles fired from an adversary. That was significant. People don't realize that. I found that actually the memo when I was cleaning out my desk at the Pentagon.
You did?
Yeah, it's dated 2017, but that to me, it's a leading indicator.
Yes.
This thing's not perfect, but it's been the target of arms control critics over the years, and it's been embraced by the military-industrial complex that has an invested interest in missile defense.
Wow, sure.
So to measure it, it's had a 57% success rate if you look at all the tests. But literally for the last 4, the last one in 2023,
100%.
it hit 4 times in a row, and it changed the test office's opinion from it has a limited capability to demonstrating it has a capability.
Okay. So, well, listen, that we just learned a lot. Catherine Bigelow didn't love what she heard from the document that you uncovered, nor did Noah Oppenheim, who I guess was the writer of the film.
Right.
Says, quote, as we see it, it's not a debate between us as filmmakers and the Pentagon. It's between the Pentagon and the wider community of experts in the space, saying that their consultants agree our current missile defense system is highly imperfect. What do we make of this?
Well, it's two reasonable sides making their arguments here.
But you've got data saying this is 100%.
Yeah, I mean, the Pentagon is their own worst enemy on missile defense and the system. They rarely do briefings on it. Over the years, they've had one briefing at budget time that lasted a half an hour, and it was the last briefing of the day. The congressional hearings, maybe one congressional hearing a year, and they just don't want it. They haven't talked about this very much to defend the system. So this movie comes out and raises legitimate questions that the public should ponder if they care about the subject,
yes, right.
about whether things are effective. I mean, I got a couple questions out of myself as someone who's pretty agnostic. One, would we only fire 2 ground-based interceptors at this missile if we've got 44 of them?
Now we're really spoiling the movie. I don't even understand what that was all
That's
about.
an unknown question that people may want to ask their congressmen, representatives.
Right.
Is that really? Would that be the case?
And then we'll watch the thing just come on down into Chicago with. You might want to try again.
My kind of town. I'm from Chicago.
I don't know why they picked Chicago. By the way, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, they don't even have stockyards anymore. But the other point I want to make too.
Yeah.
We definitely would know where the missile came from. That to me was unexplained. Maybe it was explained in an apocryphal side comment that I missed. But if I'm a citizen, I'd want to know.
You'd know where this thing launched.
We spend billions of dollars on all these space-based constellations of satellites, and we couldn't find where this thing's coming from. And then we launch a nuclear attack on Russia or China based on a missile coming from an unknown location. That to me struck a strained credibility.
All right. Talk to us about the Golden Dome. Does this mean with 100% accuracy that we don't need to spend all this money on a space-based system?
Okay, the Golden Dome is like the way Russia was described by Churchill, an enigma wrapped in a cloud in terms of from World War II.
Yeah.
They haven't disclosed much about the program except that President Trump said it'll cost $175 billion.
And it's out for bidding now, is it not?
Pieces are out there, but it's very elliptical. He wants this operational by the end of his term.
Not possible.
Not possible. There's no details on it. But if I'm a citizen who doesn't follow much about missile defense, and I see this movie, which was a lot of it was terrific, by the way, I would say to myself, wow, if these ground-based systems don't work, and President Trump wants to have a Golden Dome, an umbrella over the country to protect us, maybe that's not such a bad idea.
Right. Yeah.
That's a point of debate. I'm not making the point, but it's a point of debate.
Sure.
If I'm a reasonable citizen watching this film.
Exactly. Sure. So. Fascinating to watch all of this. And it comes against the backdrop of this meeting the president had with China and news about some of the weapon systems that China's working on. Incidentally, hypersonics would be part of that, which we've discussed before. And I don't know how you knock a hypersonic missile out of the air. But we're hearing things about this nuclear torpedo that could cross an ocean. We're hearing about a drone, an undersea drone that could start a radioactive tsunami. Is this propaganda, or do they have this stuff?
Well, there's a song, Everything Old is New Again.
Yeah.
I found the 2018 Missile Defense Review from when I was clearing out my desk.
This was also in your desk.
And there was, back then, they were talking about the Status II, a Russian autonomous intercontinental nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered undersea autonomous torpedo. Everything old is new again.
How? That was 2018?
2018. So
so this doesn't sound real to me then.
No, but they're packaging it like it's real. And
that's right.
I would hope our intelligence community would tell the president, this is an iteration of something we looked at.
Yeah.
We saw in 2018.
The heck else did you find in your desk?
Nothing I can disclose.
Like, we could have, I bet that's right. We're going to have like a segment called Tony's Desk because apparently you've got the history of the Pentagon in there. Are they reconsidering this decision to kick you guys out? Because it's only increased the news flow, to your earlier point.
Well, and it's doubled. They've doubled down. You know that they've certified.
They brought in like Lindell TV and OAN. And all that. Are they sitting in your old desk?
The cream of the right wing media. Yeah. My understanding is they're starting to move in next week in various workspaces.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So this won't be reversed as long as this.
I don't think so. No. So I'm not sure.
Would a
Lindell,
different defense secretary.
I would hope so, and I would think so. Yeah, I would bet on that. That's like a plus 200 if I'm betting. Means I'm putting out 200 to win 100 because it's so certain.
Yes, but you'd be ready to move back in if that happened.
The organization, Bloomberg as an organization, would have to make that call, but yes, I would think so.
You just wouldn't be signing any documents.
Plus, we wouldn't have the same space probably.
Maybe you'd get an upgrade, although you had a pretty nice one, as I understand. Yeah.
We have a great DSL line.
A DSL line. Okay. What's the next story that's going to come out of this Pentagon? The president says no attack or no decision has been made to attack Venezuela. Are you taking him at his word?
At this point, you have to, because he's in the Far East. Hex is in the Far East.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
maybe
is this
no
about
attack.
timing as opposed to
as opposed
planning?
to timing? Plus, the moving in of assets, bringing in the carrier. He's got to explain to the American people why this is necessary. This is a president who came in wanting to keep us out of foreign entanglements. You know, this is like Venezuela, Haiti, Haiti, Panama, Cuba, Grenada in 1983.
Yeah.
American public's got to scratch their head. Really? Why do we go down there?
Thought they had their eyes on Panama too, but I guess it's Venezuela.
Panama was 1989. Noriega was indicted for a drug dealer.
Yep, sure.
So there was a rationale for that quick action.
Interesting. Well, let's keep tabs on this. I love that. I know this doesn't help Bloomberg at all, but I love the fact that he's in the Bureau all the time now. Tony Capaccio, covering the Pentagon from a distance, we'll say, national security reporter. Thanks for uncovering this for us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You liked the movie, though, right?
Excuse me?
I liked the movie.
I thought it was terrific.
I had a blast.
I thought it was terrific.
Producer James, you got to see it. Let us know what you think.
Thanks for listening to the Balance of Power podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already at Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find us live every weekday from Washington, D.C. at noontime Eastern at Bloomberg.com.